Happy Sunday, everyone. Hope you're all doing great. Today we're talking about whether Latter-day Saints are moving to the left, whatever that even means. I was sent a Salt Lake Tribune article, and I have not yet read it. I thought I'd do something I've never done on this podcast, and we're going to react live. We're going to read this article together, and I will share my unprepared thoughts in real time with you. Now, the headline of this article in the Salt Lake Tribune is, "We asked 4 young Latter-day Saints why they lean liberal. Here's what they said." Now, before I break down the article, I'll just make a point that word liberal means something so different than it did, 250 years ago. And what it means today is typically someone who's on the left, typically someone who's progressive, typically someone who's socialist. And so these words often have different meanings in different contexts to different people. As we get into this and talk about these Latter-day Saints who are adopting liberal / left / Democrat / democratic socialist / socialist positions, my curiosity as I go into this article is what theological defenses they're making for their position. Because again, the Tribune isn't just saying, let's ask young people why they lean liberal. It's young Latter-day Saints. The subtitle of this article is, "Latter-day Saints, once as reliably Republican as the sun rising in the east, are seeing a shift to the left." So in modern political vernacular, liberal is left. And that typically, of course, means someone who favors larger government redistribution, higher taxes, taking from the wealthy, redistribute to the have-nots, broader social welfare systems, etc. Right? We all kind of know this. Those are the reasonable and common definitions. Basically, someone who is, in favor of bigger government. Now, this is where I take umbrage with right or conservative or things like that, because so often those people also favor bigger government. They just have their different political positions and different preferences, but it's not like people on the right are bastions of radically shrinking the government. And if you need an example of that, I would just point you to the fact that in the past, years, we've had super majority, total Republican control of the federal government, and yet, they can't even shut down the Department of Education. Like, are you kidding me? All they've done, it's just one little example, is they've taken a few chunks of it and they're redistributing it into other parts of the federal government. They're not removing the role of government. They're not reducing budget. They're not shrinking taxes. They're not sending power back to the states. They're piecemealing the Department of Education into other aspects of the federal government with the ultimate goal of just removing the Department of Education. But that's just reform in name only, because you're not getting the federal government out of, everything that it was doing. So I only share that as one little example to say Republicans and right are not like, oh, they're so different than the left. They just have their different social and ethical and economic issues, but they're, across the board, statists and tyrants of choice for their hobby issues. So let's get into it. I'm going to react to this Salt Lake Tribune article. Here you can see the photos of the 4 young Latter-day Saints that they are interviewing. They've got quotes from each of them. We're going to read this together, as I said, and we'll just be reacting in real time. This was published May 16th. "As a political bloc, Latter-day Saints across the United States have been about as rock red Republican as the Red Rock of Utah. But new colors are poking through, shades of lavender, purple, plum, baby blue, even dark blue, especially among younger members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. According to YouGov's analysis of data collected from 2007 to 2025 by the Cooperative Election Study, the partisan composition of America's Latter-day Saints has seen a, quote, large shift in the Democratic direction. What used to be the nation's most reliably Republican religious group now ranks second behind white evangelical Christians." Okay, so there's this supposed shift to the left that they're talking about in a broader sense. So here, Dylan, the author, is pointing out this isn't just 4 random people. They are just anecdotal examples of a broader trend that the election data is showing, this, quote, large shift in the Democratic direction. So I'm guessing the goal of sharing these 4 stories is for these people to explain why they, as Latter-day Saints, are among those who are shifting to the left. As I said, I want to see some theological arguments. Why are they why are they, again, if they're Latter-day Saints, the context has to be like, well, here's why as a Latter-day Saint, I feel comfortable supporting, leftist policies, liberal Democratic candidates, and so forth. To be clear, plenty of political conservatives still populate the pews, but an increasing number of Latter-day Saints sing choose the right at church and then choose the left at the ballot box. This guy is a good writer. I'll give him that. Or ChatGPT is. The Salt Lake Tribune interviewed a handful of these younger members, all declared Democrats, it turns out. Like, what? Is he surprised that they were, declared Democrats? That's silly. About their more liberal leanings and how their faith informs their politics. Aha, great. Okay, how does their faith inform their politics? That's the part that I'm going to be curious about. And I've shared, I think, once when I talked about the Paul Marrow religious freedom musing weeks ago, whenever that was, I shared how in 2012 I debated Paul Marrow and Harry Reid's son, former gubernatorial candidate in Nevada, Rory Reid, and he just did a piss poor job of trying to explain why Mormons should be, liberal, and I think the arguments on the liberal side to be a Latter-day Saint consistent with your doctrinal the doctrines of your faith are very poor. Okay, so let's get in. I'm excited to see if there's some good arguments here. Here are their responses, edited for length and clarity. So first, apparently, we're going to meet Cedar City resident Riley Cooper. She says in this little footnote here, her Latter-day Saint mission paved the way for her political beliefs. All right. Riley Cooper, a 29-year-old Cedar City resident, grew up in a family filled with political discussion. Cooper said because of her family dynamic, it fell upon her to find what her own political leanings were. And during her Latter-day Saint mission in Iowa is where she became in touch with her own beliefs and passion for politics. Question from the Tribune: how does your faith inform and influence your political leanings? All right. She says, when I was on my mission, one of the biggest things that we were encouraged to do was get involved in the community. I got involved in the community with interfaith councils, and it's crazy how much you learn about politics by going on a mission. I had to study the gospel every day, and I came to really understand what the atonement means and what it meant to truly love people and truly love your neighbor. And so I think my religious faith has everything to do with my political leanings. All right, I'm going to scroll up just so we don't distract with the bottom stuff and pause there. Wait, okay, huh? The question was, how does your faith inform and influence your political leanings? And she says that on my mission, I got involved with my community. I studied the gospel. I came to understand the atonement and what it meant to truly love people and love your neighbor. And so I think my religious faith has everything to do with my political leanings. A conservative could have said this, or an independent or a libertarian. I could say this. I learned what the atonement means and to truly love people and love your neighbor. Therefore, we have to reject the coercion of Caesar and not endorse violence against those who share different political attitudes than us. I could say this. I think my religious faith has everything to do with my political leanings. Great, me too. But where's the detail? The Tribune is saying, how does your faith inform? And there's no detail here. Okay, you learned about politics by going on a mission. She didn't specify how. She had to study the gospel every day. Awesome. Came to understand the atonement. Okay, what does that mean for the liberal position? What it means to truly love people. So let me read in between the lines. People on the left, typically, the bleeding heart, I love people, therefore, we should have welfare programs, because if we love people, then we should give them what they need. And it's just economically bankrupt, right? And I think even morally bankrupt. But it's just we love people, therefore they should have reproductive health care because we love women and we believe them and all, right? It's just these simplistic, superficial positions based on, I love people. I love, immigrants, therefore I sucks. And we should shut down ICE, or we should defund the police, et cetera, right? But it's this very superficial, we should love people, that leads to a lot of liberal political positions. So I'm just reading massively between the lines because Miss Cooper, Sister Cooper, did not offer any type of detail in response to the question. And her response is so vague as to be kind of meaningless for the question. Again, because someone of any political persuasion could have said this. So that's kind of disappointing that we're not getting any meat on the bone here. Next question. Have you ever found yourself in awkward positions because of your political leanings, either at church or with friends or family? She says, I still have awkward political meetings. It's hard. My husband's family is on a different side than I am, and it's one of those things that we just don't bring up. And it's hard because I am very politically involved, and I'd love them to understand my life a little bit more. It's something that we've had to realize that we just don't talk about. And there have been a lot of friends that I've lost, but I've also gained a lot of friends who have similar beliefs. I was kind of shy to share how I felt because I was worried about losing people. But as I've gotten more and more passionate, I want people to understand who I am and understand this is a part of my identity. Okay, Sister Cooper, if you want people to understand who you are and it's part of your identity, give us some detail. I know that the interview here was trimmed for whatever it says, length and clarity, but I don't think they took the clarity out. They're trying to make you more clear, and none of this is clear. What your political leanings are and how your faith informs them. It's all just generic fluff. Why do you lean more progressive? She was asked. Okay, let's see if we get any doctrinal theological stuff here. I kind of got the best of both worlds. It was really interesting growing up because there was a lot of political discussion in my family. One side of the family was very right-wing, and then the other side was very left-leaning. And so it's kind of always been this huge thing for my family, asking, where do you lie? Which side are you? But I've always kind of identified with being more progressive. As I've grown up, I've heard the teachings of the prophet. I've heard the teachings of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And I feel like there are hints and there are things in there that they've said that make me really feel like a lot of the doctrines that they're teaching are more progressive. Okay, like, such as, you were asked, why do you lean more progressive? Oh, we had family on both sides, and I've had to figure that out for myself, and I've read between the lines. I've heard little whispers from church leaders about hints and things that they've said that make me feel that they're teaching more, like, detail, lady, come on. Detail. This is my other critique of people who are very far on the left is, again, it's like the superficial, heart on the sleeve. We should love other people. Therefore, I'm a nice person. I don't judge, and we should, support other people. And therefore I support this whole leftist redistribution scheme because we don't want poor people to go without, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a caring person. Therefore I endorse, taxing all these people, stealing from them to give to other people after funneling it through this highly bureaucratic, system that's going to corrupt it all. So again, no detail. This is very disappointing, but not surprising, again, because I feel like a lot of these people like Cooper are just very limited in their political and economic views and understanding, but also their theological understandings as well. Okay, she's then asked, are there any current or recent political issues that have reinforced your political leanings? On the flip side, have there been any recent events that make you disappointed in your own political party or affiliations? Becoming a mom, she says, and becoming more politically active have become synonymous for me. As I think about the world my kids are going to grow up in, I've wanted to make it a better place for them. Everything I do is for my kids. I really love the quote from General Conference, what if their story was our story? As I've read about issues pertaining to kids, it makes my heart break, and I often think of that quote. The last few years, stepping into the role of mom, I've looked at immigration stories differently. Okay, no surprise. I've looked at the rise of the cost of healthcare and living in general. I've looked at the way politicians treat people. And most important of all, I've looked at how certain groups treat others. If we're supposed to love our neighbors as Christ did, I believe that means we love everyone. Christ could have been mean to the woman at the well. She was a Samaritan after all, and the Jews and Samaritans grew up hating each other. It would have been easy for him to ignore or even treat her poorly. He didn't. He just left. Okay, so again, we're getting the love. We got a little bit of immigration, cost of living, and then as they talk about love and how we treat other people, I'm reading between the lines that there's a lot of like LGBT kind of trans stuff in here too. Right? So these people go from like, we should love, say, trans people, right? They go from that position, like those people should be loved, which everyone I think can broadly agree with. They go from that to say, well, because they should be loved, we should concede political ground to everything that they demand. We should do everything that they want us to do. We should change all our speech and refer to them not based on biological reality, but whatever they want us to, And so this tolerance and this love gets completely warped into changing behaviors and beliefs to accommodate individuals who you can still love, though disagreeing with them, but it's like this compulsive agreeing, like, oh, because we love them, we have to acknowledge them, and we have to give them a safe space, and we have to do what they want us to do, and we need to go through a struggle session and use their terminology. Like that's how these people think. They equate love with this just total belief in behavioral change. All right. Looks like we're moving on to the next person. This is one Eric Biggert, Salt Lake City resident. Here he is at the 2024 Democratic National Convention. He is the head of the LDS Democrats. Okay, not the Democrat Party, but some little tiny group within it for LDS Democrats. So surely this guy is going to be more politically informed. He's going to have more detail than Cooper did. Again, I haven't read any of this. Being part of the LDS Democrat, he's going to have talking points ready to go about how this LDS doctrine supports that Democratic position. So I have high expectations for Brother Biggert. Let's see if he can rise to the occasion. Eric Biggert, a 38-year-old Salt Lake City resident, joined the church 20 years ago, around the time Barack Obama announced his initial run for the presidency. Now Biggert is the current chair of Utah's LDS Democrats. Here's question number 1. How does your faith inform and influence your political leanings? He says, our church is all about caring about people. I recently got released after 4 years serving as the ward clerk. Almost everything I did was help people with welfare, with their rent, with getting them food, with making sure their kids had somewhere to sleep at night. That's what the church is good at, and the church has to do that for people because the government doesn't do it for people in Utah. I'm grateful we have the church. If we didn't have the church in Utah, we would be in big, big trouble. I'm motivated by how I can best serve those around me and help those around me. That's a gospel motivation, and that's a political motivation. Okay, there's a little bit of substance here. There's no scripture, there's no doctrine, there's just this vague, like, the church helps people. And the church is about caring about people. And then he says, what does he say? He says, the church has to do that for people because the government doesn't do it for people in Utah, categorically. The Utah state government has no welfare programs, apparently. Interesting. Completely inaccurate, but interesting. Wow. Okay, so he's translating caring about people. We should care about people. That's his gospel motivation and his political motivation. And so he cares for people. He's motivated by how I can best serve those around me, help those around me. So, I mean, again, this is all great. We should love people. We should care for them. But it gets translated from, because we should love and care for other people, we should compel everybody else through taxation, through regulations. We should force them into doing the type of care that we want to see happen. And we want the money funneling through our preferred NGOs and through USAID. And we want our buddies to skimp off the top as we're helping other people. Like, that's what this all translates into. And at the root of it is people like Cooper and Biggert who love and care. And the implication is that someone like me or others don't love and don't care because we don't endorse their redistribution schemes. Okay, so again, like, there's a little more substance here, but it's very, very thin. It's just our church is all about caring about people. He didn't quote Jesus. There's no scripture. There's no doctrine. It's just fluff. Let's move on to the next one. Have you ever found yourself in awkward positions because of your political leanings, either at church or with friends or family? I've seen, Biggert says, when bishops get up every other March and read the letter from the First Presidency about participating in elections and going to a caucus meeting. And then he only announces the location of the Republican caucus meeting. That happens all over the state. I've heard people tell me that all the time. I've always made it a point to yell out in a sacrament meeting that the Democrats are also meeting at 7 o'clock at the other school in the neighborhood. But those were just the biases that come with an olden generation that maybe never knew there was a Democratic caucus. For the longest time, progressive folks in the church have sat through Sunday school lessons where they denigrated trans people or gay people, and we've talked about social issues, and it's been difficult to share a differing opinion on those because you don't want to be the other person in the group. You don't want to be seen as being different. So we just have kept our mouths shut to the point where we just stopped going to church. But things are changing. People are keeping their mouths shut less. People are speaking out more, and I'm looking forward to that becoming an opportunity for dialogue. All right, I'm going to call BS this idea that for the longest time, trans people or gay people have been denigrated in church, and it's not as much as he's portraying. He does say talk about social issues. To that, I probably would think he's referring to doctrinal social issues around marriage as being between a man and a woman. Like, okay, yeah, that's probably being talked about in Sunday school. And yeah, if you disagree with that, then you're probably going to want to keep your mouth shut or find a different church. Right? So, okay, whatever. Nothing really interesting here. He just feels like a little bit of a outcast or something. Why do you lean more progressive? He says, I joined the church in 2006. The conference we just had a couple of weeks ago would have been unrecognizable to the members in 2006. There was no message about chastity and divorce. They didn't talk about the family proclamation. There was no constant focus on morality. It was about loving each other and loving God and serving people. And it had the most diverse set of speakers we've ever had. Ethnic diversity, of course. The church itself is changing, but also the Republican Party is changing. I think people are seeing the delta between what the church teaches and what Donald Trump's Republican Party teaches as being wider than it's ever been. Of course, you know, Trump's Republican Party, this guy is a political operative. He's not talking about conservatives. Here he is being asked about liberals, you know, or being more progressive, but he's much like Rory Reid was when he was debating me. At no point was he actively talking about the liberal LDS position. He was just attacking Republicans in Congress. Like he was just this like party mindset operative, and that's all he could, it's the lens through which he looked at. And same thing with this Biggert guy, the fact that he says Trump's Republican Party. So, okay, he's saying we got some ethnic diversity in General Conference now, and there's a de-emphasis he's observing and focus on the family proclamation or morality or chastity. He's inferring this is a good thing, that progress as a progressive is a good thing. I'm inferring that he wants to see more of it, that he anticipates more of it, that the church will continue to go in a so-called progressive direction. Are there any current or recent political issues that have reinforced your political leanings? Literally every day reinforces my political leanings. All right, good for you. On the flip side, have there been any recent events that make you disappointed in your own political party or affiliations? My belief is that being a part of a party is not like picking a spouse. It's not a vow for the rest of your life. It's like picking a bus. It just needs to get you where you need to go. You don't always know or like the people on the bus, but our bus is going in the right direction. Their bus is heading off a cliff. Again, this is a party guy. So their bus, the Trump Republican Party, is heading off a cliff. Our bus, the AOC and all these people, the Gavin Newsom, our bus is going in the right direction. Poor misguided fellow. Again, I'm getting like almost nothing from this of any gospel substance justifying the liberal progressive view other than our church is all about caring about people. So it's all just this vague, superficial love and care position motivating these people and equating it in their very uninformed economic and political context as, oh, the party that endorses all these government enforced welfare schemes and all the trans and all the whatever, because we just support people, that's how God wants us to show love, is through Caesar and through the implements of Caesar. And I'm a good person because I vote for this law forcing that guy to pay for all of it. Like that's how these guys equate everything. Okay, let's see. Now we're talking to Provo resident Lane McPherson, who says her love for the arts helped her lead to her progressive political beliefs. All right, a 26-year-old Provo resident. She is an enjoyer of the arts and said that her love of pottery and musical theater led to her political beliefs. This ought to be good. How does your faith inform and influence your political leanings? Trying to bring about change the way Jesus Christ did through love and care and compassion is the best way to bring about change, whether that is personal or political or anything else. I've always believed that we should help our fellow man and help everyone be able to succeed and find ways to lift up those who need it so they can then become self-sufficient. I've always believed in compassion and being considerate of those around us. So, you know, what I'm getting from all three of these people is yay, love. Again, that's great. We need to love people. It's the greatest commandment. I'm not knocking it. We should care for other people, 100%. But it's like this implication that, oh, therefore, like, no matter how this is done is okay. They don't care about how it's done, the mechanisms, the people involved, the funding, apparatus, none of that. It's just this very, very kind of superficial thing. And they're talking about the love and the care and the whatever, but they're not translating it with any specificity to here is why my Democrat Party affiliation is consistent with that. Or here's why my progressive or liberal views are consistent with that. They can't. They haven't made that connection. I think if they had to articulate and think it through, it would start to break down because they would clearly see that you can't love people by forcing it. You can't compel charity. God's commandments to love and serve and care for other people were never justified or commanded to be done through coercion and mandates and force. As I've written ad nauseum in past articles and in my books and said at times on this podcast, like, it's completely inconsistent with Christian conduct to use the implements of Caesar to advance God's commandments. Period, exclamation point. And so you get these people saying love and care and, compassion. Again, yes, but they're not articulating how their political beliefs are consistent with those things. So we can all agree God said this, but they're not making that connection, translating how does that bridge over to why I have formed my political views. It just shows the lack of depth of thinking and analysis, I think, on the part of most of these people. Because I think the arguments are very flimsy for why someone who believes in loving others can be okay with using government as the mechanism to spread that supposed love. Have you ever found yourself in awkward positions, et cetera, et cetera? There have been times when at church I hear people say things. I remember one time in Relief Society, somebody was talking about members of the LGBTQ community, and it just rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, well, just because they believe differently than us doesn't mean they're less deserving of happiness and care and compassion. But the biggest time when it's gotten awkward is during my grandparents' Sunday night dinners. There have been a lot of times when my grandparents or my aunts and uncles have said something, and it's a lot more intimidating to try and speak up. So for the sake of family peace, most of the time we all avoid talking about politics. Why do you lean more progressive? Come on, give me some detail. At the base of everything, here we go, foundational. At the base of everything, I believe that Jesus Christ is about changing people on the individual level for the better. Okay? And I've always believed that if people could just talk in a way that's not blaming each other and communicate effectively, there would be a lot more understanding. And I think that we might actually see some change, vague change. But the problem is that a lot of people, when they're talking to speak, they're not talking to listen. All right. At the base of everything, her foundational belief is that Jesus Christ is about, quote unquote, changing people on the individual level for the better. It's a little bland, a little vague, but we'll give it to her. Sure, yes, changing on the individual level for the better. None of this implies, she was asked, why do you lean more progressive? Again, she's not making the connection to, oh, here's this suite of progressive policies and why I believe they're consistent with my foundational belief about changing people on the individual level for the better. I believe these progressive policies, voting for these politicians, these tax and regulatory regimes, these government programs, these are the vehicles through which we can change people on the individual level for the better. I am pro-choice, and I believe women should be able to abort their kids anytime they want and kill them. And that's somehow changing people on the individual level for the better. Like, there's just no articulation at all. It's just vague. Are there any current or recent political issues that have reinforced your political leanings? The big, beautiful bill definitely reinforced my leaning toward the left. Jesus Christ condemned the greedy and wealthy and blessed the humble and poor. He cared for those who needed help, both physically and spiritually. The bill cutting healthcare spending and giving tax breaks to the rich is literally directly against everything Jesus Christ taught, and it goes against everything I believe in. It's just clear how much people like these are propagandized by the influencers and the propagandists within their echo chambers. Right? The fact that, like, I talked weeks ago, and I'm using a defense of billionaires, about the greedy and the wealthy and blessing the humble and the poor. It's clear that this individual has translated this into eat the rich as a spiritual virtue, that no one should be wealthy, and that anyone who's wealthy is therefore greedy, therefore we should take it from them and help the humble and poor. She points out Jesus cared for those who needed help, both physically and spiritually. Yes, but and he commanded us to do the same, but never at the point of a gun, never with other people's money, never under a mandate from government officials to do so, never being forced. It was an invitation, always a voluntary act. Charity is nullified if it's not voluntary. There's no point. There's no moral or spiritual benefit in it. On the flip side, have there been any recent events that make you disappointed? I've seen several Democratic politicians who are purposely trying to gerrymander their own districts, making sure that everyone's voices are heard rather than fighting. Okay, great, whatever. Last person. Last but not least, this person wearing a peacemaker banner and button with a police belt thing. Logan resident Jaden Weeks says she's a liberal because of her Latter-day Saint faith. Okay, last but not least, hopefully we're getting a little bit more, she's a liberal because of her Latter-day Saint faith. Why? Jaden Weeks, 28-year-old Logan resident, member of Mormon Women for Ethical Government. Great. Very leftist political group. Said her drive to be politically involved comes from her ancestors, who were strong women with strong opinions, with strong desires. Okay, well, you can be strong and totally wrong. Strength carries no inherent moral virtue. How does your faith inform and influence your political teachings? Please give me some substance. What does it say? My religious beliefs and my political beliefs are kind of deeply intertwined. How? I am a liberal Latter-day Saint, and I'm a liberal because I'm a Latter-day Saint, because of the values that I've been raised on and instilled in me from a young age. Namely, gosh. Have you ever found yourself in an awkward position? I've spent most of my life kind of being quiet about my political beliefs. I've become louder because the silence is almost complicit. People kind of just think you agree with them. Sometimes they say egregious things, such as, at this point in my life and in my understanding, sometimes I lead my conversations with, hey, just so you know, I tend to be liberal leaning, so if I start talking politics and it bothers you, let me know. Safe space. Why do you lean more progressive? All right, last chance. The greatest commandment is to love God and love your neighbor. My values lean on loving and understanding my neighbor, acknowledging that I don't know all the answers. Everyone's path is different. The Lord moves in mysterious ways. It's not for me to cast judgment. I don't have to fully understand where my LGBTQ brothers and sisters are coming from. I just have to know that God loves them and I love them and I can trust them to make the decisions that are important to them and between them and their God. Okay. Love. So here it's mostly love more in LGBTQ type context, right? So trusting someone to make decisions that are important to them in the privacy of their own home are different from whether they should be, competing against, girls in a sports thing or using the same bathroom as, little girls and so forth. Like trusting people to make private decisions in the privacy of their own home are very different than what typically bubbles up into the political sphere, which are the more public manifestations of how people are wanting to live, / demanding that others use their, preferred terms and change the civic function of marriage and all the more public things that flow from people's private acts. So not really any substance here other than, again, just saying love. Wow. I shouldn't be shocked, but here she is again with her banner. Are there any current recent political issues that have reinforced your political leanings? The continued pull away from working across party lines, the tribalism. It's not necessarily that it's reinforced my political beliefs that way, but I see a lot more humanity on the left side of things. Love. I've had a lot of friends who are Republican who are also deeply concerned because they don't feel like that's the party that represents them anymore. I mean, I'm not a Republican either, so whatever. Looking at this through a party lens, I think is problematic. I was only interested in this because of the political philosophy aspect and the theological aspect of being a liberal Latter-day Saint, being a progressive. Like, who cares about the Democratic thing or the Republican thing? So here I'm still seeing no connection between people's theological and political affiliations and philosophical beliefs. On the flip side, there have been any events make you disappointed in your own party? My identity is not my political party, right? My identity is that I'm a child of God first. It's all about ethical politics, fighting against things like this current data center. Sometimes you cross paths with people who are more extreme on the left, and I don't condone that at all. They're bad people anywhere, etc., etc. Okay, that is all boring. Look, I know people who affiliate with the left and are Latter-day Saints and attempt to reconcile the two and have their arguments. And I've, over the years and now, I guess, 2 decades, argued with them online. So I know the arguments exist and I've engaged with them. And I thought and I hoped that perhaps for a musing like this, there might actually be some arguments that would elicit a response on my part, and we could kind of critique and evaluate on a theological level what those arguments are. But we have been disappointed and should not be surprised. But again, it does fit in with my broader critique of individuals on the left whose political position. Why am I picking on people on the left and not the right? There's plenty to pick on people on the right, and I have, in the past, particularly around topics like war. But on the left, I think it's particularly egregious when you look at topics, say, like abortion or government redistribution of people's property that's stolen from them through taxation, and these individuals just wrap it all in love. I'm such a good person because I love others. We're the party of compassion. Therefore, all of these government policies are virtuous because we love people and you don't. Otherwise, you'd support this and more. And I just think that's so doctrinally bankrupt and morally vacuous. And I long have. Therefore, people who try to reconcile being a leftist and a Latter-day Saint, I think the views are very inconsistent, as are many things on the more traditionally Republican conservative end of things. I am an equal opportunity critic in that regard. And in my books and elsewhere have kind of broadly critiqued people of different political backgrounds whose views I think are inconsistent with doctrine. So that is the music for today. Oh, what a disappointment. But curious what you think. I'm sure we all know or have in our families people who are Latter-day Saints and on the left. Curious if you've engaged in them with a conversation around these topics. Like many of these people are saying, especially in Utah, they probably more like to be silent because they are a minority. They don't want to ruffle feathers at the family Thanksgiving or at work or whatever. But I've had, I think, good faith, open discussion with a number of liberal-leaning Latter-day Saints over the many years, and there's profound disagreement on our part. But I do think at the base of their attempt to combine the two identities is what we saw in this article: love. I'm a loving person. God wants us to love others. Therefore, hey, look at all those suffering people. Anything that can help them is good, and therefore I'm a good person. So we should support any attempt through any mechanism, particularly the government, to go help those people without any effort to look at the unintended consequences, look at the moral function of how that system operates. None of that, right? Just, they don't care. They don't think about it. It's just equating love with whatever will help those people. And because I can vote for it, I get my sticker. I'm a good person because I support those policies. Never mind the fact that people on the left are woefully uncharitable personally compared to people who are traditionally on the right. And so people who tend to think of themselves as loving do so on the basis of voting to redistribute other people's money as opposed to donating their own. But anyways, all right. Sorry for the disappointment. The article itself was disappointing, but such is the attempt to combine a very statist approach to politics and the gospel of Jesus Christ, of our Latter-day Saint dispensation, and all the scriptures we've been given that say so many things that stand at odds with these types of political beliefs. So, all right, I'll see you in the comments, and I'll see you next Sunday.